Well, I was talking with another friend about just this whole idea of like Synergies. She runs a nonprofit down in Mendocino of just how do you piggyback with other groups and, just make the most, smallest effort for the biggest effect kind of thing. And that's one thing I see, especially when I'm bringing Wally, like if we're at a farmer's market, like each of these farms or businesses should have an online component to it and a social media thing. Okay, thanks. And a lot of people don't, like you have a soap company or something else and like that. And like it's nice to be at the farmer's market, but there's only so many customers there. So how to just maximize that. So and this is something I'm new to. We're really just doing our first partnership like this of affiliate marketing. And we were reached out to by my friend Melissa Norris, and she already has a really big brand and a big following. So, and I've been on her podcast a number of times. But just to me, that kind of typifies the affiliate relationship, and I think here within the Applegate, using AGA or whatever overarching mechanism, we could have like a federation of all the small businesses and cross-sharing content and cross-promoting things. And so this is Melissa Norris's page here, and I think this is it's probably her YouTube channel, but you can see she's got almost 500,000 followers. And, like it would take me a long time to get to that level where working with somebody like that, it's worth offering up 10% of every time she mentions Siskiyou Seeds. People come to our website with a code and she actually gets 10%. So like we just recorded a podcast interview and we're offering a discount on some products. So we're offering up 10%, and then Siskiyou Seeds as a business using a plugin app on Shopify that was pretty easy to figure out. We didn't have to really design anything. It automatically directs to her account. So that's something I think we could do way more of, and this is her website. I think this is the third podcast interview. This is one we did on storage tomatoes. But this idea of kind of creating these flywheels, because like once you develop a business, you can be doing these other things rather than every sale being the heavy lift. And I think that's an important idea of, I don't know if groups like the Herb Farm or Oshala does affiliate marketing or not, but it's something I am open to doing more, and it's just figuring out with who we could partner that would make sense. But the idea of what products, maybe not all the products, like with Melissa, it's not everything with Siskiyou Seeds will be like, okay, this week at this time it's peppers and tomatoes or these bundles, because some things it just wouldn't, it's a lot of our profit margin to offer up. So sorry for this slide being a little grainy, but understanding the power of your social media. So I feel like affiliate marketing and social media, it's a similar thing of leveraging your social cachet. And so like, and that's something that's monetizable, and I'm really just beginning to get a handle on that. And we just did the work to be able to monetize our Facebook account. So we don't even have it to do anything. We just put our taxpayer identification number in there, and then they're running ads on the Siskiyou Seeds Facebook page, and we get some revenue from that. And then we'll start doing it with Instagram too. So this is already happening whether you're participating in it or not. I think they have certain thresholds of follower count you need to be at. So, you need to like start off to build a strong user base and then identify suitable monetization strategies, which they've already done, and then a plan to support the growth, stay responsive. And so I'm going to be getting together with my son Wally to really figure out like, okay, what kind of content gets a lot of action. He's been doing this with his mom, just on her Facebook page and I think made $1,200 from Facebook revenue. It just gets deposited to your bank account in a month. So, being regular with engaging content, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I thought this was interesting, and the slide is from 2020, but the market sectors, toys is high, and software down to footwear, not so much. Sometimes when I see these lists, I'm like, well, where does like gardening stuff fit in? And I usually think health and wellness, but it also is home improvement. So just like who's doing this work out there. This is another kind of view of all this stuff. It's also increasing your reach and like brand awareness. So it's not purely just about becoming an influencer or something, but you're putting the effort in getting your message out there, which is really the mission of your brand, if you're thinking about it in that way. I thought this was an interesting, like a social media platform comparison, looking at the different ones, the primary focus between Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. TikTok isn't on here. I know some people really rock that. It'll be interesting to see how it changes, because I don't know if you knew that like there was a top-down federal thing where they splintered off US TikTok, and I think it was Oracle picked it up. So, well, I'm sure that's going to affect everybody on that platform. So for us, we're mostly on Facebook and Instagram. I don't really use Twitter, but also, YouTube, we do a lot. I see YouTube more in my mind for our business as just providing educational content, and not so much trying to drive sales. And hopefully the idea is that if people are like, oh, that was really helpful to watch that little video, I'm going to click their link and go buy seeds from them. So, it's a lot of just content promotion. I think that's LinkedIn is one I feel like it's not really on my radar of how to use that to support our business, but I know some people in more knowledge-based work, that would be at the top of the heap in terms of where to put the energy. I like these visual things of like how to conceptualize all this stuff. So, back to building a strong profile, and that's one thing I'm seeing when I look at, like, I go to the Wednesday evening market and I see people, and it's a lot of people that are at the kind of ground floor of building a brand. And what is your logo? What's your mission? Do you have a website? Is it clear? Do you have QR codes? And a really accessible, and that's one thing we did as Synergies as a team, is figuring out like what's our fonts, what are the colors we use so that things remain consistent so people can recognize it. And like when I go down to the ecology center now, they hired like totally professional people in that thing. So every product they do has the same style, color scheme, font, and it just makes what they do really recognizable. Which ironically for them isn't that important because they sell everything out of their farm store, so they're not trying to like broadcast beyond that community. So building that strong profile, increase followers, and that just seems to be this, just staying consistent on it. I don't know, it seems like at different times there's different strategies. Like I know since we've been doing the podcast, my son will pull out short form content and we'll kind of drip that out through Instagram, but also YouTube. So YouTube, more than the long videos, is what do they call them? Shorts. And that's where you get all your action. And sometimes we'll have a short that'll get, tens of thousands of views. Other times it's only like 50 views. So I don't know how the algorithm picks it up, but my son he researches it. And he said, before you upload anything, so he edits it, it gets it all ready for me, and then I'll upload it. He's like, go on and spend 15 minutes looking at other videos, not your own, and liking and commenting, even if you just say good job, because you're basically getting it in there and massaging the algorithm. So when you upload, you're already like, you're not starting from zero. There's like momentum within it. And I guess that's the way their algorithms are trained, is they want to boost the exposure of people that are using the platform of YouTube, which totally makes sense. And I recently listened to an interview. This is someone who's, we'll just say they're a social media influencer, and they had 8 phones, and they had as many Instagram, TikTok, all the accounts on every phone as they could, and that's what they did all day. They created content and then just cross-shared the same content on all, like as many, TikTok accounts as you could have on one phone. And then it just sounded crazy to me. But the people that are, making a lot of money, that's how they're doing it, as it becomes like a full-time job. So then, you figure out strategies, that's that person's strategy, that's not my strategy. And then tools, I'm sure there's more tools. I've been a bit averse to using AI tools, although I know my son does, because I think like my community is more about authenticity. And I can totally see through, like when I see certain AI, like there's this cartoon graphic that's kind of these somewhat pastel colors that seems like a lot of people are using. It must be some kind of app that you could like, make me a cartoon that's promoting going to the library and getting Halloween books or something. But it's like seeing a McDonald's. I just drive right by it. It doesn't interest me at all. But if I drive by like local, gastropub, that catches my attention. So I generally have been avoiding the tools, the AI tools, because I don't think the kind of people that are in our, business ecosystem story universe are AI inclined. But other people are all about it. So I think that's more a personal choice. And I, personally, we're just now at this phase of figuring out how to monetize this. Like, we've built all this stuff. Like, why have an Instagram account? Why have a Facebook account? And especially if you have a lot of followers, turning that into a reason to create more content. Because I think that's one thing also I look at, take a step back of why is all this important? And from our like North Star for Siskiyou Seeds is that we become irrelevant because gardening and seed saving becomes so common that we're obsolete. So how do we do that? Well, providing seeds is one thing, but that's really just like a starting point. But if you don't know how to do it, either growing the vegetables or flowers or herbs or saving the seed, then you need to understand the sequence of events. So I always look at it like we provide a service which is facilitating successful gardening. And seeds are part of it, but so like the YouTube channel and educational content on social media all builds into that. And if it can make some money, that's great. And probably, as we monetize Facebook and stuff, or all the meta channels, I'm just gonna tell my son, like, you get that money. Like, you help make it happen, and then you'll learn like what works. So I thought this was interesting, and you can see the data is a bit outdated. This is from 2014, so I imagine it's just more now because people spend more time online. But in the US, the red column, US and Canada, an average Facebook user 11 years ago is worth almost $6. So, for us, like, all right, if we have 20,000 plus followers on each Instagram and Facebook, obviously we don't get $6 because Meta is skimming the vast majority of it off. But I imagine there's over time of using these tools, we'll figure out like, oh, wow. And then we get back into that idea of like a federation, and maybe we need a collective of local businesses in the same ecosystem. If we could be cross-promoting and leveraging one another's content and products, and I'd like to see a greater Applegate become more the hub that is helping facilitate that more and more, whether it's showcasing a vendor of the week or something like that, or a podcast that's maybe even facilitated through AGA or the library, where we have business owners come on and amplify their voice. And I think that could be a really successful thing. And that's another way of looking at affiliates and all these like ancillary relationships, much like I don't know if this is actually true, but I've heard it said many times that like the 49 gold rush in California, if you showed up in 49, you weren't actually making money, and oftentimes it was the people selling blue jeans or shovels that were making more money than the gold, because somebody realized like digging gold's hard work, but they all need shovels, even the people that wind up getting no gold. And so how can we set up that system that is the support for everything? And sometimes it's just getting the ball rolling on some things, like we're selling tools from Red Pig, which is a local Oregon business, little hand tools that are beautiful, like hand forged tools. But what I really would love to see is somebody locally who's blacksmithing, and of the 20,000 people in the Applegate, there's nobody making hand tools here. I'm sure at the beginning it would be really hard to produce a profitable product, but once you figure out your designs and stuff, that could become a business. And that's another thing I'd love to see, whether it's AGA or some other organization, be like a business incubator. And the Mondragon Cooperative would do that, like starting at junior high in the Basque region of Spain. You were doing vocational training, and then if you and your friends or a friend had a business idea, you would go to the mentorship thing, and they'd be like, that's a great idea, let's build out an enterprise budget for that. They had their own banking system. We'll invest in your business, and we actually have we're already buying bulk steel, for instance, like with the tools over here, so we'll get you in on a co-op, like wholesale account. And same with the woodworking guild, they can make the handles. And the Mondragon Cooperative, at least in the BBC video from the 80s, they had 90,000 people part of it, and like 80 businesses. So that's really the gold standard, and a lot of it's like resonating with a shared mindset and value set. This is just looking at, just showing that like in the US, again, this is older data, monetizing individuals, and this is the attention economy that we hear about, of just more eyeballs for more minutes on the site turns into money. And I think for each of us, especially if we're doing like educational content, how do you get people, or as Seth Godin has said, in a room where everybody's shouting, how do you make an impact with a whisper? And so I know for myself, like we never are sensational, or we're not like creating thirst traps when we put out content. It's just like, here I have my garden and we're doing this, and maybe you're interested in it. There's a wide range out there if you're willing to be a little whatever. I remember when I was learning about rocket stoves some time back, I looked at all the stuff on YouTube, and people that knew what they were doing released more than I did. And I remember coming across this one. They were really in the prepper community. So he was in like camo. He looked like he was ready to pick up a machine gun, and she was in a camo bikini. And they were making a rocket stove. It was clearly leveraging the thirst trap. Like if I was mixing coarse materials, I probably wouldn't be wearing a bikini and flip-flops, but that was their angle, And they had way more followers. It was interesting because I think the algorithms just pick up on that, and I think that's one thing I want to look into doing more with my son, and just for Siskiyou Seeds, is to try out different formats. And we've had some of our team do content, and that does really well because people are going to relate to someone like them, or that they want to become like. So that's something I've been thinking about quite a bit. I have a friend who she's like a birth doula, and does like women's health coaching work. And she's literally, with the camera, figured out like, okay, where I crop it increases the views, which is crazy. But she figured it out. Like she did a series of photos, like, okay, half inch lower, half inch lower, half inch, bang. You get to a certain threshold, and all of a sudden you're like, because literally it's AI tools, and that's one thing that I think is important to understand, which is why I want to play around with it. Like if we include cats or dogs or sheep or kittens, like does that increase our, where you show up in the search stack? Because I think at this point it's safe to assume the algorithms are all being run on some kind of AI tool. It's not a human somewhere. But in closing, this idea of like, once you build a brand, how do you make the brand you work so hard for create, that work for you? And I think, within the arc of entrepreneurialism and having a business, at first it's like all this work and all this time, but it's not making much money, and then eventually it's making enough money to break even. But then over time, maybe we don't want to work so hard, so shifting from physical work to knowledge-based work. And then that's really the brand you're curating, is that your knowledge is valuable and people want access to it. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for us out here to work together, just like with Janice Tipton, just stepped down off the board. She's been a volunteer in this community since 1974. Like, her knowledge set is huge, and thankfully she's willing to stick around and help us out. But like, there's that social capital is something that in rural communities we're actually pretty rich in. Whereas like in urban environments, like content creators are always hungry for content because their lives are kind of boring. They're just going to Starbucks and taking Ubers and getting pizza, and they're kind of just like all the other city people. And I think that's one thing for us out here in rural areas that's easy to overlook is, I was listening to a Brett Weinstein podcast. He's like, what do people do in cities that work in cities? They send emails and they respond to emails. That's pretty much what people in cities do, unless you're like a janitor or you're doing like the service work, a plumber, an electrician or something. But most of the people in the white collar world, that's all they do. They send emails. Whereas us out here, we like create things, we grow things. We're creating like the substance that all wealth is built on, which kind of in closing, one of my mentors, Gino Castronovia, said, all wealth comes from either farming, logging, or mining. And I would add education too, because like a child or anyone like learning, there is like wealth that comes out of that knowledge. But what's interesting in the agriculture world, as opposed to mining and logging, is no one sells raw logs really. Or nobody sells raw ore. It's always like they refine the ore and turn it into something, a value-added product basically, or they mill logs and turn it into lumber, which is a value-added product. Whereas farmers, they like grow potatoes or whatever, and they bring it to the market or sell it wholesale. And they're literally selling a raw commodity. And it's a total race to the bottom, and that's why your average, like, a loaf of bread, I think about 15 cents of your like normal, maybe not a high-end boutique-y like loaf of bread, but it's 15 cents goes back to the farmer for every loaf of bread. So the trucking, the processing, the wholesaling, the storage, the end-line merchant, and I think these rural areas are oftentimes, that's why the flag of the state of Jefferson is that circle with the two X's, because this region has been double-crossed by both Salem and Sacramento, and that's where that comes from. Because they just take the resources, but the money for libraries, schools, all that kind of stuff doesn't necessarily come back to here. It was interesting to listen to Janice talk about creating the Roosh Library, because she's been here so long, and how they had to like push a bond measure through and do all this volunteer work and really push and push and push to get the county to value putting a library out here. And likewise, this library is really nice where we are, but I'm sure back in the day it wasn't so much because the counties focus on the primary cities. So we in the rural areas, like, it's a cool, in permaculture we say like turning liabilities into assets. So it's a liability to live in a rural area because people just like it for the beautiful scenery that they drive through and visit. But for those of us that live here, we have to organize to capitalize on that somehow so that we're not continually taken advantage of or just become a bedroom community. And like just being down in Mendocino is such a fascinating thing. There's places that are $500 a night with an amazing ocean view, but you go to Fort Bragg and it's kind of down and out, blue collar, always struggling to meet their needs, even though they're like have all this money from the Bay Area coursing through. And so it's that rural mindset that hasn't figured out how to, it'd be like, I don't know, trying to swat a fly and you don't have the mesh. You just have a circle through it or something. So how to like tighten that weave, and I think that goes back to the building relationships. Who are your affiliates? who is your team, and I think AGA being like having an umbrella that's not a business is helpful, and that's why I imagine the herb farm they don't call me or anything like, hey, how can we help your business thrive? They're totally insular. All of their activities is for themselves. Where I think in rural areas, we kind of want to be somewhere in a midpoint, maybe not squarely in the middle, between pure capitalism and Marxism. And so the idea that like, oh, by working together or using my what I've built to allow other people to uplift their thing is actually going to benefit me in the long run. So Douglas Rushkoff calls that midpoint distributism, the idea that dollar turnover and local currency. I think the ultimate zenith of all this is how can we develop a peer-to-peer local currency that's like a digital platform, some kind of digital token, or that by using it, like you can imagine if we had one, they've got those little tokens you use at the Wednesday market or at the Monday Williams market. What if we had one where all the vendors agreed, like, you actually get a 5% discount if you're using this, and there's no when you use a card, there's a 3% fee, or you use PayPal or Venmo. The banks are constantly skimming money. What if we could create an internal mechanism for exchange that was digital? And maybe it's as simple as tap the phone, and you're exchanging Applegate bucks around, and maybe there is a 3% that goes into a fund for bootstrapping and incubating new businesses in the area for young people. But until we figure that out, I think we're always going to be the victims of money, because the main affiliate that happens is the banks, and they're just constantly leveraging our work, sweat, capital, assets. And so I've been using the example of, like, if somebody buys apples for me at the farmer's market and they use a card, I've just lost 3% of that transaction. Then I go get gas and I use a card, and there's another 3% of that money I made at the market. And then I do my shopping for other groceries and I lose another 3%. And by the end of the day, I might have lost 10% of the value of the money I made that just went to the banks. Or more, maybe 30%. If you did 10 transactions, that's 30% of your money. And a lot of people don't think anything of it, but the banks are making money appear out of thin air, which is what they do, fractional reserve banking. And then they just give us a tiny percentage if you're willing to leave your money in the bank. But they use your money and basically 10x it and then loan it out at insane interest. We can't, there are rules where we can't become a bank, but I imagine there's a way within the blockchain world to create a fungible token that we use locally. And I think it would be really astounding to see how much more value, instead of it leaving the community, if it stays in the community and circulates. So that's a project. I know you probably would have some ideas about this and other folks around how to make the technology work. But as Catherine Austin Fitz, and I'll close here, who was in the first Bush cabinet, and then she was on the board of Fannie Mae for years. She says, you're not going to change anything until you change the way money works. And right now we can watch the way the money games work. And so we have so much asset. It's so beautiful here. All these people love it here. But a lot of that potential energy is just leaking out of our community, I think, right now. So, yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Chime in.
This is so interesting.
Yeah.
What kind of came to my mind is just like an affiliate could also like lend itself to creating like tandas. So in like Mexico, it's that informal community money pooling. So if an affiliate, if there's enough groups involved, there's like possibility of people putting in money like per like business or per group, and like whoever is needing money to like maybe like promote or go like want to achieve something grand, the group would be cheering them on, and so like that month that person would get that money pool. So like, there's a really beautiful way if an affiliate can be formed. There's like money like systems that could be informal but formalized, that can support like almost doing mini, what's the tech words, like startups, but like you'd be supporting the next person, be like, hey, like you need something like to be resilient, like we know how hard it is, like you've been putting money into the pot, like there's a consensus, and like you would get that first money pool to like support or like launch something, but there would be like this collective like support that strengthens the bond of the rural connection, that is relationship, like the foundation of a relationship, but then there's also that strong trust in money that people can pull from. So I don't know, it's just a kind of cool concept when you were saying what is possible out here. There's just like so much that is possible when you get people to support each other like financially and like build that trust in relationships, because that's like the number one thing.
Yeah, it's almost like an internal venture capital model.
Exactly, yeah.
I just read that Costco is struggling, all big stores are struggling financially, and they're offering this promo where if you sign up for a membership, it's $100 a year membership, they're giving you, I think, $40 off, but you have to spend $200 the first time you go shopping there, or more, to get it. So like imagine if like this idea you're sharing of like, all right, we've got Applegate bucks or Applegate gold or something, and it costs $100 to be, or whatever, you have to spend X amount within the first month of using it, and you can only use it among these, businesses, and we're gonna give you a little promotional discount, so you're gonna get, let's say, $100 of value for $90 or something. So people are like incentivized to do it, but maybe some of that money goes to, that like the 3%, because we're all used to giving 3% to the bank. So if you amplify that over all these businesses that are here, and I know my buddy Nash Huber up in Sequim, Washington, he's got it's called Nash's Best Produce there. He co-founded the Dungeness River Valley Land Trust, and they got their food co-ops in Olympia and Seattle and Tacoma. To every sale, they donated 0.25% to the land trust. And over time, he's gone from 40 acres to 600 acres that they own. And then not only do they own the land, it's protected for development, they're farming it. And so if he has a farm worker, he's like, hey, you've been really showing up. We have this money from this land trust to buy this 40 acres. It's got a house on it. Do you you can live in the house and farm it and use the equipment and the business. And, like here's a real example of a way they inserted like a beautiful land tax, like if you like it nice out here, there's a cost associated with that. So I hope we can see more of these kind of forward thinking models, but I think we have to bootstrap it from grassroots, because the Chamber of Commerce at Medford or Grants Pass is not going to come out here and save the day for us, because they're just trying to make their businesses in town work, and they don't want people leaving Grants Pass to come out here. So
Yeah, I love the affiliate federation through AGA, that idea. I'm not sure if it's exactly what you're thinking, but in my mind, I'm envisioning like at least through social media channels that they're cross-promoting with a lot of the local small businesses. And I'm imagining if it's done well, that could amplify not just to our local market, but far beyond, because I could see that would be a cool community supporting like underdog type of thing that other people would pick up on. And for my business, I would be so happy to offer affiliate commissions to them for helping promote my business, because I trust the organization. I've seen what they're capable of doing in our communities, and I could see that really benefiting a lot of small businesses.
But it could be, this would be a cool idea to bring up with Jeff as a business network coordinator, is, right now we just have a membership fee to be part of the business network, but I've been pushing for, we should have tiers. So no matter how small, your lemonade stand, you can be a member for $5, but have it tiered up, and then we provide different levels of services through the AGA network. Because from this Jackson-Affine week at our board meeting, we had a bit of a kind of a recap of like, how did it all go? And one of the events of the Jackson-Affine week was at Apricity Winery, which is out by Murphy. and they had their biggest single day sales as part of that. Through that affiliation, like it drove all this money. So like AGA is promoting it. And so we're getting grants and donations to support our staff, to support the local businesses. And, you know, there's like exactly what you just said, like in reality happening. You know, like people are becoming more successful through collaborating. Whereas some winery is like, I don't want to deal with you guys. They didn't get that boost in sales. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that we can. And I don't think we're gonna be able to do it, you know, like those images, there's the pure numbers of Facebook followers, like that's kind of, or YouTube. I think you kind of have to do every strategy simultaneously, but really AGA, like I remember when I joined the board, I was like, how many people do you have in your email newsletter? And they're like 500. I'm like, there's 20,000 people on the Applegate. You should definitely have more. Like boost that up, because we have 20,000 for Siskiyou seeds, and we see it's like that audience is something that we can leverage. So.
Yeah, I know it would take somebody in that organization that's, you know, dedicated to marketing, but
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, besides that, once that's in place, I see it as a very realistic idea. Like I don't see it being far-fetched, and maybe that could even like help someone's, you know, launch their marketing business or something, because it's in their benefit to do that as well.
Yeah, and we are kind of as a fun, it's not a for sure deal, but Kate, who inherited Longsword Vineyard, doesn't really want to have a vineyard, but having a vineyard gives you this EFU little exemption to be able to host events and stuff, because the winery's lobbied for that with the state. She's offered for AGA to move our offices there, and then we could even build, you know, some buildings to house. We're gonna have this market trailer, and we have this truck for like emergency stuff. But I've pushed for like, imagine if we had a room, you know, it doesn't even need to be this big. That's a podcast studio, and then we could have office hours with somebody like you or various people to help do the business support work that all small businesses need. You know, or workshops like this, have somebody come in that's like, how do you do HR? How do you figure out workers' comp? Or all these things that a lot of small businesses have to do. So I see it moving slowly in that direction, but it all takes time, and the right people who see why it's worth doing. So, yeah.
I'm in favor of it.
Yeah, cool.
I have another question.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just more specific to my business, because I love the idea of affiliate marketing for all the reasons you outlined.
Yeah.
Aligning with other businesses and sharing audiences. And I have started dabbling in that, actually with one affiliate so far over the past year, maybe a little bit more, but it hasn't resulted in any sales. But that person's account is like quite large. It's like on Instagram, it's in the 400,000s, and they have, I forget how many YouTube followers they have, but it's quite a bit. And they've promoted my online course a couple times, like seasonally throughout the last year, and it's resulted in no sales. And I think, no sales.
Ah.
And I think part of it is like, you know, a lot of it is, well, actually that's part of my question is what should I look at? But I've been improving my process of my sales page and the marketing language, and I'm learning a lot from the resources you've suggested, like Seth Godin and Compass in the Nail, and I'm learning like, one of the things that I realized that I haven't done is like I haven't created those like succinct brand messages that's easily repeatable. But just in general, like, what do you recommend I look at to go from here?
Yeah.
And I'm also like, it's also such a young business that I haven't made tons of sales myself without an affiliate, so I'm not sure. I'm kind of feeling like I want to focus on that, but also like I want the help from outside. So, but without so much sales yet, I don't have a lot of data to point me where I need to improve my process.
I know I can't say I figured out a recipe, so to speak. You know, like with Melissa Norris's podcast, the third interview that she's done with me is about to drop. And I mean, we saw a little bump in sales, but it wasn't huge, and we were offering a discount. So that's like, I think one thing people do respond to, like, use this code for 10% off. Or we usually do minimum like 15% off to like be above, because 10's so small. 20 is like people really jump on that. Like we recently ran a 20% off sale. Just we promoted on social media and our email newsletter. We had a big bump in sales. Obviously, we had to give that up, but you could obviously adjust your prices to make it work.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, you know, what has worked really well is my friend Margaret Roach, who has her own podcast and garden blog called A Way to Garden. And it might be worth emailing her too. I could get you her email. But she's also writing for the New York Times. So she has a huge, and so we had a 2-page interview with color photos in the Sunday New York Times, and that was a huge jump in sales. We didn't offer any discounts or anything, but it was the New York Times. You know, their audience is so huge. Whereas sometimes I wonder, like with the algorithms on social media, like even if somebody has 400,000 followers, whatever they put out is not going to that, or people, they're maybe getting 10% of that or 5%. I don't know what the numbers are right now. Yeah. And I think that a lot of the social media platforms are increasingly becoming pay to play, unless you're paying into it to sponsor posts, boost posts. They're not going to push your content up. Or unless you're like a daily poster, somebody that's like I described the one with 8 iPhones and, you know, just going crazy, and I don't know, it must work because people are doing it. But I think trying different things and keeping track of the metrics around that. But in my experience, people definitely respond to a sale. And with a limited time, like you have to act now. And I see that when we do courses too, like, hey, we've got an early bird discount, and kind of there's a fine line of how much you can push people, like, hey, only 2 more days, 1 more day. Like if you're getting if I'm getting daily emails, I'm like unsubscribing. I'm just like, you're too much. But creating that, like if you don't do this, there's going to be pain for you, and I know that's classic marketing advertising. And, you know, sometimes it's just not the right audience. It's hard to know. You know, like Melissa Norris, I showed her, and she does such a great job of all of it. It's like, I don't really have much to offer to her audience because she's a seed saver herself, and she's doing seed saving content. That said, I am beginning to write for their magazine, like a seed saving column. So maybe if it's like endorsed by Melissa, you should listen to this guy, you know. So same for you, like somebody that's similar, but you're offering, I think there always has to be a value proposition for all around, because a lot of people do the quick back of the napkin math in their head, and they're like, is this worth it or no? Or yeah, it's hard. And the economy's changing all the time. Like, what did I just read? 67% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. So a lot of people are like, I don't have any money for that extra thing. And that's real. So, yeah.
That was helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, totally.